Hello and welcome to Homicide Hobbies. I'm Andy,
And I'm Claire.
and we're here to talk about some of the disturbing things that go on in the world, past and present. We feel like not knowing doesn't mean the crazy doesn't exist.
So we're going to scar you with the knowing.
Enjoy.
What we talking about today?
Today we're going to talk about Robert Wayne Danielson, aka Bob. Now, he will do some hitchhiking criminal activity through Nevada, California, Oregon, and Arizona. Any guess as to the time frame?
The 70s.
Wrong. The 80s. And you know what's funny? I actually wrote that in my notes that you'd be wrong. But it was funny because I was prepared, even if you guessed it right, to be like, wrong. That it was just in my notes. But it worked out. But just a heads up in this case, it nearly gave me a headache from all the eye rolling. So that's your trigger. Be prepared for some nonsense.
Okay. That's a weird trigger. My eyeballs are going to see my brain today, apparently.
Well, okay. But it's just let you know that it's just a bunch of those, I feel like even though it's not reported that he is a compulsive liar, I feel like he is, because some of the shit is like, what? But you'll see. Well, let's just jump into it, shall we? So, Bob.
Let's shall. Get old Bob. Okay. Are we calling him Bob? Bobby? Robert?
Yes,
what are we calling
Bob.
him?
You can call him whatever you like. I'm going to call him Bob. Now, Bob was born August 25th, 1946 in Iowa. I do not know of any abuse or head injuries during his childhood or anything that could shed light on his shitty life direction. So don't ask me any nonsense questions. I don't know. Now, it is reported that he experienced depression and dabbled in drug use early on. I don't have an age of when that all started. It just says early on. So put that in your hat. Drugs are bad. Now, his first imprisonment is at the age of 21. He's sentenced to 18 months for credit card scams. Now, while he's serving this time, he gets hooked on speed, also known as crank, methamphetamine, ice, crystal meth, you name it. For those of you that don't know, amphetamines mess with your central nervous system. That causes a high level of dopamine to be released. Now, dopamine is that brain chemical that's associated with pleasure and reward. So it makes sense that people would become addicted to it, that artificial feeling of good things, especially in prison.
Makes him happy when that pee-pee's in his butthole.
I don't know that any of that transpired, but that's when he'll say he got hooked on it.
Uh-huh.
Now, he would also claim he would be popping 700 to 1,000 pills of methamphetamine a day, and that's when my first eye roll in this, because I don't even know how that is physically possible. He would literally have to be doing nothing else, and I'm pretty sure he'd be dead.
So I don't know anything about any of that, so...
Okay, think of a quantity of... Okay, look at your bottle of ibuprofen with 1,000 pills in there.
Uh-huh.
That's a lot of dang pills. Where... And they're all coming out of somebody's asshole, I'm sure. So how is he alone eating all that a day, Andrew? 1,000 a day? A day? No, he's so full of shit. Maybe he meant milligrams, but even then, he'd be dead. Well, that was my first eye roll, because no, he was not. No, he was not.
I don't know.
I feel like he'd get murdered for hogging that much, for one. And for two, again, he'd be dead.
I don't know. I don't know how much somebody can do.
Keep in mind, he's only in jail those 18 months. So it's not like he started right when he got in.
Maybe he's not so good at the math.
I think he's not. I think he doesn't know what 700 pills looks like. He could have just left it at he was drugged up a lot and doesn't know what he was doing. Or
maybe he was eating somebody's...
That's what I was going to say. Or maybe he counted the penises that went down his throat. I don't know. But
I was going to say eating asshole and getting the pills that way, so he lost track.
Or they were dingleberries. But regardless, I find it hard to believe he was doing 700 to 1,000 pills a day of anything.
Hey, Dave, that conversation was for you.
Anyway, so when he gets out, he will claim to have tried to make an honest effort and working an 8-hour normal job kind of life. but realized he could make way more money selling drugs than working a regular job. So
can I just ask a question? This is more or less, I don't know if we have any drug dealers in our
podcast listening pool.
Yeah, and our vast majority of people that listen, I feel like a lot of them are of the legal abiding side of things. But isn't it supposed to be like super bad to be a drug dealer who does drugs? Because you're not supposed to sample your product, you're supposed to sell it. Because if you're doing it, you're not making the monies.
Like a chocolatier eating all his product.
Right. Like that doesn't make sense to me. How can you sell drugs if you're addicted to them?
I feel like, again, that he's delusional into thinking he's making a ton of money. I think he wasn't good at doing the counting, so maybe if he held the money, he thought it was more than when it was in the bank.
Have you ever seen those like videos of kids when they get their first job and then they get their very first paycheck, and then when they open up the envelope and they see that like all the stuff that gets taken out of their check? I bet you that's what happened. He worked his first 8 hours a day job and then got his first paycheck and then saw all the money that was taken out, and he's like, you know what? Screw this. I worked my butt off and all this is going to whoever these people are. If I go sell drugs, nobody's taking any of that but me. That's what it is. It's Uncle Sam's fault.
Could be. So he would claim it was just a few months out of prison and he began doing his drug dealing, right? Now, he would say that he was one of a 5-person operation that controlled 90% of the drugs in Oregon. What? Again, I rolled my eyes because I was like, he's so full of shit. And I think he has delusions of grandeur of him being the best drug dealer of, no, he really? Okay, well, it's a 5-person ring.
Is he an only child?
No, he's
Was
not.
Was he the youngest?
No, I think I know he's got a sister. I'm pretty sure she's younger.
So he's the oldest.
But I did again. I rolled, and I'm not even the majority of the way in this. And twice this man has made me do it. No, it is not. But
I'm just trying to figure out where his birth placement is, because is it he's a spoiled little youngest child? Is he the forgotten middle child? Or is he the
idiot?
Yeah.
But that's why I said I feel like this one we could name an eye roll or something along the lines, because it's not even... So he'll tell a jury this, like when he's eventually on trial for the bad things he does.
That so he's it's bragging like, about being a criminal.
Right. So he'll say that like he was only in his 20s when he was controlling 90% of the drug or the drugs going in and out of Oregon. Again, major eye roll, because did he think that was going to impress the jury, that he's a good businessman?
I'm going to say he's the oldest and he wanted to do it with intent.
Well, anywho, so Bob will set up 2 households. One that he shares with his wife and his son, just a few blocks away.
Wait,
he had his second
he's married?
home. He does. He's married in his 20s. Well, he's doing so good in his business dealings.
I didn't realize he got married and cranked out a kid. Where was I napping?
He done married himself a woman, and they popped out a kid. Now, just
Did you say that?
Just now. Oh. Just a few blocks away, he has his second home set up with another woman. We'll call her Sandy, so you don't get confused, and their daughter. He would tell them both about each other, and that he would support them both if they didn't go running around on him. Cue another eye roll.
So they were aware, like his wife was aware he had a girlfriend, and his girlfriend was aware that he had a wife. Or was he lying about that as well?
That's so either one. Well, no. So, we're gonna get into this one. So
does he know it doesn't count as telling them if they were asleep or not in the room?
Well, I rolled at it of like, I'll support both of you and our children if you don't run around on me. So, feller, you were doing the running around first. You can't do the okay, but now we're not gonna.
But I'm still gonna keep both of yous.
Right. but when I'm done with you, I'm going to spend time sleeping over here situation. But I was like, okay.
Were they next door neighbors? Because that would be super funny.
I don't have addresses. It just said they're close enough for it to be like down the road. So
I'm going to say they're neighbors because that entertains me.
So it's not long before his wife begins seeing another man. Now, Bob will claim he's a junkie that was his friend. His name is Thomas Davis. Now, Sandy, if you don't remember, Sandy's the girlfriend.
The girlfriend, yeah.
Sandy and Bob go to the motel room to confront this couple. And I was like, really? You're going to bring your girlfriend to confront your wife about her cheating? Really?
Sounds like you're going to do that sister wives thing.
Well, Bob gets there, and, he claims he brought Sandy so that way he kept his cool. Now, Bob will claim that he told Thomas that he could have his wife as long as he promised to support her and the child. I was like, you're trying to get out of taking care of your wife and child while you're fucking another lady and had another child. So again, this man...
Yeah.
But I guess they came to that agreement. But mind you, Bob and Thomas remain some sort of friends/business workers because on June 23rd, 1970, Bob and Thomas are on their way to a drug deal when they get into a squabble. Now, at some point, a gun enters the mix. Obviously, we're only going to have Bob's side of this because he ends up shooting Thomas to death. But Bob will say that it was self-defense and that Thomas pulled the gun on him first. However, it's Bob's gun. Now, prosecutors charge him with first-degree murder, but there's no witnesses, and there's also no other evidence to prove how things happened. So prosecutors allow him to plead guilty to voluntary manslaughter and send him right back to prison at the age of 23. He gets a 25-year sentence.
Whoa. He's 23, has a wife, a girlfriend, and 2 kids.
Right. So that's why I was saying, and keep in mind, this delusional man thinks he's controlling 90% of the drugs in Oregon at 23.
Well, when is this? This is in the 80s at this point?
Well, we're in the 70s right now. He just shot
I knew it.
Thomas
I knew
in the
it.
70s.
I fucking knew it.
I almost penciled that in if Andrew's going to cling to that we're in the 70s now, but this is just when he starts to do his stupidness.
I had an inkling. My brain was like, this sounds like some 70s shenanigans. I sure was right. Continue.
But that's why when I was like, he's in his 20s. None of this shit is actually happening. He's got the drugs ruined his brain and he remembers it clearly in a different way. But I would say I agree with the prosecution. I think he killed Thomas. I think he was tired of seeing him around his wife. I don't think it's possible to do any of that thing.
No. I know what happened. I wholeheartedly think that because they were buddies, you know how some guys, they chit-chat kind of like we do about our menfolk. Surprise, Jason and Dave. How we talk about the sexual escapades sometimes. I bet you Thomas forgot, oh yeah, this was his wife. And he was talking about some stuff. And then Bob was like, ew, that's my woman. I want her back.
He was jealous she doesn't tickle his butthole anymore.
Or she let him.
And Sandy doesn't do that.
Yeah. So I think that's what that was over, was they were talking and dirty. And then Bob was like, wait, she was mine. I want that back. And then Thomas was like, that was not our deal.
Yeah. But regardless, he gets that 25-year sentence. And as we've learned, you don't serve your whole 25-year sentence. So
7 years. Tell me he did 7 years.
He did 11 and is out on parole.
He must not have kept up with his under 4 reprimands a year or month or whatever the hell that stupid statistic was.
It's the 70s. So that brings us into the 80s because the 70s he missed, which he would have really enjoyed because that was all about sexual escapades and the drugs. So he must be, that was a real punishment. He missed the 70s.
He sure did. And I guess he's going to use the 80s to make up for that.
Yeah. So he gets out on parole. It's only a few short weeks after his release that Bob decides to go rob some people because, as he's learned, living life by the rules, he doesn't think makes the best money. So Bob confronts a couple in Arizona at a campsite, a 60-year-old Harold and a 55-year-old Petty Pratt. Now Bob surprises them, overpowers them, ends up tying them up with rope and shoots both of them in the head executioner style and then makes off with their truck. The next day, the bodies are discovered and the truck is found abandoned later on. Police put up a reward for information, but since that's out of the area, he was basically passing through. Nobody saw anything. There's nothing to go off of. Yeah, it was real hard.
Yeah.
But he continues heading on, so at this point, he heads back up to Oregon and meets a 14-year-old girl named Lenora Johnson. Bob is 36 at this point, if you're not keeping track, and they begin a relationship that Lenora would describe as like a common law marriage. Cue another eye roll because I was like, she's fucking 14.
Wait, I have a question. What happened to his girlfriend and his wife? Because you never mentioned that him and his wife got divorced.
Oh, he just left that whole...
He just walked away from his 2 children and both the other women and moved on to a 14-year-old?
Let's face it, Andrew, he was gone 11 years. So they continued about life, and he didn't seem to want to care what they were up to when he got out.
Anyway, so he moved on to someone that was the same age as his children. Got it?
Correct. Now, a weird side note, which I feel like may be a contributing factor to Lenora's mental issues, is when she's about 9, 10-ish, she would babysit a little 5-year-old boy at the time, right? Well, he gets killed in front of her house. Now, I don't know what the situation is because the article only said that the boy was in the pickup truck with his mother when their vehicle was rear-ended by a van. And now he died. The mom didn't. But even in the article, it mentioned that it was out in front of his babysitter's house, Lenora Johnson. And I was like, okay, so I'm curious, was he in the back of the pickup truck? And it was...
That's what I was thinking.
Like if you don't have far to go kind of thing, just jump in the back. Although I feel like 5, I don't know if I'd do that with a 5-year-old. Well, but also, if they're traveling fast enough on a road,
So I'm wondering, because remember Mom and Dad, or Dad, would let us ride in the back of the pickup truck down our street? Because it's a 1-lane gravel road. So depending on where the babysitter lived, when Dad would pull off the main road, he'd let us hop out and hop in the back of the pickup. Well, if somebody went flying through and rear-ended, that kid would go flying into the back of the windshield or the back of the...
So that's why I figured, since it was in front of her house, that was something, because he's the only one who dies in this, so I figured he was in the back of the pickup truck.
Or he could have been climbing out of the vehicle.
Right, or I figured he wasn't buckled up. But I figured even then, even if he was in the vehicle when it got rear-ended, I don't feel like he would have died in the car, but I feel like he was in the back of the pickup and that's why he died.
Unless it was like Dad's old pickup where it had like those suicide seats and you'd like slam your head. Yeah, because I feel like...
we lived, but that could have been our head injury.
Well, but we survived but barely going over just speed bumps. So I can only imagine if somebody had rear-ended the back of Dad's pickup and we were belted in, but those seats, with the way they folded down and then buckled, that was not
right in
safe.
The temple. It was not.
Yeah, and like you're a little person, and so the beat that I want to say it was metal that went around the window, that held. Yeah,
because it was cold in the winter.
And it would just slam the shit out of your temple right into the side. And I remember that when I was slightly taller, I was super excited to sit there because it was like, this is not going to hit my temple. And instead it hit my jaw and then my temple hit the window. And it's like,
Does it
What the
count as
hell?
applying ice to the injury?
No, but I can tell that I thought I was going to outsmart it because we're driving up to Aunt Janie's, and I laid my face on the window because I thought for sure if I started off with my face intentionally against it, that maybe there
Yeah,
wouldn't be so much slamming. That didn't work.
no,
It had
no,
more of a
because I can
bounce
tell you,
effect.
I totally did that too, and it did. You just bounced off it and
So I
still
feel
cracked your
like
head.
if it, depending on the pickup truck, if this kid was in a pickup truck like that, it wouldn't take much to smash. Like, there wasn't a lot of room to begin with. It was only like less than 2 feet of space, and you're just
Well,
kind of mushed in there.
so my thought process was that he had to have been in the back of the truck only because even in the bed, even not, or even in the truck or the cab or whatever, not seatbelted
It's
in, his mother would have been pretty messed up also if it was that hard. So that's why I kind of figured maybe he was in the back of the pickup truck. Maybe she was backing out of the driveway and somebody hit the rear end of it and launched him out, and she didn't get the impact because it was coming at a different direction.
Well,
But
was she dropping him
regardless,
off or picking him up?
I don't know. But regardless of whatever happened at the end of that driveway, even if Lenora didn't see what happened, 911 and everything that went out there, she was probably somebody who ran out and saw all that. So that's why I threw
Yeah.
it in there, because she will partake in some of the things with Bob as we go forward. And I feel like that traumatic event when she's 9, 10, maybe that's why by 14, she's not. Oh, she really. I mean, fuck Andrea. It was the early 80s. They weren't dealing with stuff like that. So
Yeah.
they probably just continued about normal, and she didn't process whatever she needed to process.
She had her a traumatic event. And to be fair, not funny about it, but
No, that's why I threw it in there, because that I feel like could be factored in to what's wrong with Lenora. Now, that brings us to March 22nd, 1982. Okay, well, they meet Bob and Lenora meet Edwin and Ida Davis, because they're a
wait, what?
couple. But Edwin and Ida, hairball,
Yeah.
they meet Edwin and Ida Davis. They're both 64. Now, they ask the Davises for some help. Obviously, it's a trick because it's like they're one of those sick, twisted couples that go around trying to look all nice and innocent, but just to have people let their guard down. Now, the Davises invite them into their camper. They're soon overpowered and injected with a massive dose of horse tranquilizers, more than enough to kill them.
Don't you have to be
Bob,
like a vet to get horse tranquilizers?
it's the 80s. You probably do now, but I don't know how they got a hold of the shit that they did. But also in my research, that there are people who abuse them, like they just do tranquilizers. So I feel like he also could have purchased them somehow, some way. But regardless,
He is a massive drug dealer.
well, he was. But Bob and Lenora, they leave the couple for dead after they ransack the trailer. But luckily for the Davises, a friend finds them and they're rushed to the hospital and saved.
What did he
Now,
do to them exactly? He shot them?
no, with horse tranquilizers. So I think
Oh,
he
right, right,
thought
right.
he killed them, but it just, I mean,
He subdued them
yeah, is what
a
really
lot.
happened. He thought, I'm sure they thought they were dead. But regardless, she participated in it. But they ransack the camper and then uh, leave them for dead. But again, they don't die. A friend finds them, rush to the hospital, saved. That's in March. Now, when we get to June 25th, same year, Bob and Lenora find 62-year-old Arthur Gray fishing in a park in Eugene, Oregon. They tie him
What's with
up
them victimizing older people?
because they think they've got money. Now, poor Arthur is just fishing in his favorite spot. Their like stomping grounds are parks, and I think that's because there's not a lot of people. People go there for the quiet to relax. So they really target people who are just enjoying nature. But so they tie him up, and Bob shoots him in the back of the head, and they rob him. They leave him there.
So I don't know about you, but I regularly bring all of my cash and valuables to go to a park to go fishing or camping.
So
What
that's
these
what I
people make
didn't
no
get.
sense.
So that's what I, again, don't do drugs. But that's what I didn't get when they robbed him, because when he was fishing, I specifically don't bring anything that if it gets lost or damaged,
Or
that
wet.
is of
Yeah.
important. I understand robbing the people who are in the campers because they're typically traveling for a while and all their shit's with them. Not
Yeah,
to
but
say you
still,
should do that, but going fishing?
no, I think they're just they're choosing older people because they assume they have more money because they're more established in life. But even when camping in a camper, you still don't bring like all your jewelry, and you bring survival stuff, not monetary
Well,
importance.
so you'd bring like your traveler checks, your credit cards, stuff like that. Things that I wouldn't bring when I go fishing.
Yeah.
So
It's still
that's,
stupid.
it is stupid. But the sad part is not only do they leave him there for the animals to do the pickings of him, but his body is found the next day by a youth group.
Aw,
I know, I was so sad for, like, they're gonna go out for like a nature hike fishing trip day and instead they find a body.
that's awful.
It is. But that's the
Do
end
you
of
know what
June.
do you know what age group the youth group was? Just
I don't.
youth.
I feel like they've got to be young teens, because who takes
Yeah.
smaller children fishing? You're just going to get hooked with literally all of them, or spend time getting them out of the trees. But
Yeah.
so that happened the end of June, right? That's really the first person they kill together. Now, mind you, Bob has already confided in her the other people he killed in Arizona when he first got out. So I don't know if she's just like swoony over him and his tales of things. And they probably think that they killed
She
that couple that they horse tranquilized. So as far as she knows, I mean, this is just building up.
Well, she's 14, so she's a bit on the naive side, and his lies are probably more feasible because she has no real
Yeah,
understanding of life or
right.
lying sacks of shit, or the fact that he's a goddamn pedophile.
Yes. I also was curious, where the fuck are her parents?
Yeah.
But
Yeah. I
anyway,
didn't, my brain didn't even jump to that one yet. It would have eventually. I just
well,
hadn't gotten there yet.
I was curious because what parent lets their 14-year-old date a 30-something-year-old man or go hang out
Maybe
with
she,
him?
maybe she became kind of a handful and kind of rebellious
Have
since
a runaway?
the 5-year-old died. And
Maybe.
because she had a lot of like PTSD situation and didn't know how to channel those emotions, so she just became kind of a handful. And then when she did go MIA, maybe that was part of her whole situation. She would just disappear for days at a time, like
Well,
we've
as
seen in
we've
other
seen, yeah, I was
cases.
going to say, like we've seen in the 80s, that's apparently what some children did. They
And well, even
disappeared
in the
for months.
70s, they would disappear and go hitchhiking.
Yeah.
So 70s and 80s were just wild with what kids got away with. And not to reference a movie, but I think of the what's that movie? Now and Then with
Oh, when they're
Demi
just
Moore and
bicycling all over everywhere.
yes, and they would leave early in the morning and weren't back till dark, and it was just like the parents did not keep an eye on these kids. So maybe she was kind of on that level of if
Yeah.
she went MIA, it was part of her norm, so her parents just didn't worry about it. But
Yeah.
that's I don't know.
Well, so they did that horse tranquilizer shit in March. Then they just killed poor Arthur at the end of June. Well,
June, yeah.
July, Bob and Lenora hitchhike from Oregon to California when they spot a couple at an RV park to rob 69-year-old Benjamin and 62-year-old Edith Schaefer. Now, Bob knocks on the camper door. When it opens, he forces his way inside at gunpoint. Lenora ties up the couple with twine, and Bob drives the camper a few miles up to a ravine. Now, Bob then instructs Lenora to walk the couple's dog. As soon as she's a good distance away, Bob shoots the couple. Now, I
I don't believe it.
personally think that he sent her out with the dog because maybe she was having some sort of bout of conscious or guilty conscience of the other ones that they had robbed and killed.
No, I don't believe it. I think he's just taken. First of all,
Well,
is there a witness that confirms that's what happened?
well, my other thought was so no. But my other thought with the walking the dog was the dog wouldn't shut the fuck up. So he's like, get the dog out of here. I don't, although they never say what happened to the dog. And I know other people who are not dog people will probably be like, who gives a shit about the dog? But what did they do with the dog? Did they just set it
They
loose?
probably just, yeah, that would be my guess. But I don't believe it. She's been a part of all of this. I'm going to say he just told this version of things, or she did, to lessen whatever kind of, because I see it coming now that when they get caught, she's going to get a lesser sentence unless he kills her.
Okay. So Lenora claims she hears the shots and goes running back to the camper to find them shot in the head. Now, Bob then demands she help him get rid of the bodies by rolling them down the embankment. They then ransack the camper, taking traveler checks, credit cards, and other possessions. They then drive off in the camper and would eventually abandon it in a commercial parking garage. It would take 2 years before the Schaefer's bodies are recovered, so just put a pin in that. They dump their bodies over that ravine and drive off. Now, meanwhile, the Schaefers, their family know that they're traveling around. That's how they're visiting family and all that. So people start to notice they're missing, obviously, in those 2 years. Now,
Yeah,
Bob
they're
and
not showing up.
Lenora, Bob and Lenora, I feel like they do the hitchhiking after they do a murder which is really, not to say it's a good idea, but it'll really screw with authorities because they're not going to connect out-of-state murders.
Yeah.
They head to Arizona. Now, in November 1982, the money they had acquired from robbing and murdering the Schaefers was running low, so they strike again. This time, the victim is 38-year-old Ernest Coral. They shoot her execution style and dump her body in a ravine near Bob's hometown. Now, by this point, police are on to Bob for a number of warrants for his arrest, including check fraud, driving on a suspended license, and a number of other parole violations. Now, you remember that couple that injected the horse tranquilizers? They were able to identify Bob from a mugshot, so he's also wanted for attempted murder.
Good.
Now, mind you, the Schaefers, their son was responsible for maintaining like their house and the bills while they were doing their RVing. Obviously, he notices their disappearance when they fail to arrive at a home of a relative like they were supposed to. But he also starts getting bills for weird charges, and then he starts seeing the forged checks. So he reports that, and the police start off that investigation by just running down those weird charges. Eventually, the police locate the camper that was in that commercial parking garage. Now, it sat there for over a month. The garage owner puts a lien on the truck and then eventually sells it to an employee when the shit just sits there. But when the employee tries to register the truck, it's discovered that it had been reported stolen. And that's what leads police to all of that. Now, that leads them to Lenora, who they are able to track down. I don't know if she decides to go home. I don't know how these two separate. I think maybe she got tired of running around or whatever. But
sounds like she probably wanted a shower because it doesn't sound like they stayed anywhere that they could really bathe.
Yeah, but Lenora, when they talk to her, she'll confess to her involvement, but says that Bob was the one who murdered everybody. Yeah, she also told of the other murders that Bob had told her about and the ones that she was involved in. She gives them a general
fun fact for all you people out there. If you're part of it and tying the victims up, whatever happens, you are still responsible for it because you fucking participated.
That's what
She's an idiot.
Yeah. No, but she was also she's even at this point she's still a youngin'. But now
she's still an idiot.
She gives them a general idea where the bodies could be found. Now it's because of her that they find the Schaefer's bodies. That otherwise they still would have gone unnoticed in that ravine.
Jeez. I'm surprised they were still able to find them 2 years later. I would have thought animals
So,
would have dragged them every which way.
so it was notated in several articles that it took them a while to find them because they were underneath a year's worth of debris, just how much was piled over them. Now, in December 1983, the Schaefer's bodies, like I said, were found where they rolled them off. Lenora agrees to testify against Bob and is taken into protective custody. She's now 17, but was 15 when the Schaefers were murdered. But she's given immunity for her role and
Of
everything
course.
because she's willing to testify against Bob. And let's face it, at this point, they already know all, like, fuck, the dude's on parole. So, for another murder. So they want to get him. They look at it as she's a youngin' and an idiot, but they're gunning for him.
Well, and back in the 70s and 80s, they didn't believe girls could be criminals.
There's that.
We were just manipulated into being criminals because we females done can't think for ourselves.
We don't
We's
have
the
the
damsels
brain
in distress.
capacity.
Sure can't. We's the damsels in distress. And if the men folk that save us are the bad fellers like this here Bob, then we are just too foolish to think for ourselves and go, this guy has got some awful shenanigans. Perhaps I should not participate.
Yeah. Well, anywho, Bob is charged with 2 counts of murder, but he does not surrender to police, so he's considered a fugitive. Now, once he finds out he's wanted and everything, he starts calling in death threats to possible witnesses in Oregon and Idaho and anywhere that he thinks somebody might
Who?
testify against him. Huh?
To who? Everybody's been killed off.
My guess would be like his drug pals, anyone who he thinks might have information, and I think that's also why she was taken into protective custody, is because they figured she's definitely somebody he's going to want to rub out.
Ew.
He's thinking like a pencil with an eraser, Andrea.
Okay. Well,
Make
she's
disappear.
also she's the only one they have to convict him. They have no one else other than the tranquilizer people.
Other than, again, he's an idiot. His brain is like Swiss cheese. I can just tell you he starts making random death threats to people.
He's so stupid.
But bear in mind that he did all this while on parole for his first murder. So it's just like he shouldn't have been let out to begin with.
He shouldn't have. But we lack in our U.S. judicial system to let people try again.
Now, all those charges are in December, and by February 9th, since he still hadn't turned himself in, a federal warrant was issued for Bob, and he's arrested on April 7th when the FBI is able to track him to Odessa, Texas, where he was working with a traveling carnival. And not gonna lie, I cringed at that one because I'm like, oh, I just knew it. Some of them people look questionable, and now I know why. They're fugitives from the law.
They sure is. Tell me he was dressed as a clown, because I think those fuckers
I
were
feel
creepy.
like he was running the Ferris wheel. Anyway.
I feel like he's, the one that spins you around and plays the music and it like slams you up against the side. I feel like he's running that one and he puts it on like hyperdrive. And tries
So
to
I don't
shake
even know
people.
if they have those anymore. That was probably something for the 70s and the 80s when they didn't connect brain trauma to anything.
The last time we went to the fair up here, granted that was before COVID, they still had that. My kids loved it, which again, my kids with the head injury.
You should get one of those old-timey trucks then and smack their temples around. They'll like that too. But they find him in the traveling carnival where he surrenders without a fight and he is sent back to Oregon for his trial. Now, he gets his life sentence for his crimes in Oregon. Then he's extradited to California where he goes on trial for the murder of the Schaefers.
Hey, can I ask a question?
What?
And apparently I done should be taking notes. The couple with the tranquilizers, was that in Oregon? Like near his hometown?
Yeah, I would say it was Oregon.
Well, my question is they were able to identify him based off of, you said, a mugshot or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
So I would think it would have had to been semi-local and that they already kind of suspected him and his shenanigans because if it was out of state or even farther away from where he started off, I don't know how they would have pegged him as a possible suspect.
Yeah. I don't know how they get their pool of people to flip through.
Just curious. All right, carry on.
So he's extradited to California, where he goes on trial for the Schaefer's murders, right? Now, during his trial, or like his wait for trial, he would write 4 letters to his mother, 59-year-old Marianne Bishop, and would go as far as to try to plan an escape.
Wow.
Now, his escape plan included his mom smuggling a .357 Magnum handgun into the courthouse for a shootout in the hall. He urged his mother, right, he urged his mother not to hesitate to shoot anyone who tried to grab the gun, quote, saying, "The one shot should stop anyone that wants to be a hero. Then they could start taking hostages."
Can I ask another question? Does she have a criminal history?
No.
So she's like a normal law-abiding citizen, and he's like, "Hey, Ma, I know I done killed a bunch of people, but I want you to join this side of the law against them and just shoot everybody up to free my murdering ass."
So I think it was more along the lines of when he's extradited to California, this falls on when they just now reinstated the death penalty. So he's trying to tell her she's got to help him escape, otherwise he's going to get the death sentence. Now, Oregon did not have the death penalty, so that's why he was sentenced to life in prison and then sent to California to do that trial.
I get you.
So the letters that he had sent to his mom had been taken out of the jail by either his psychiatrist or his attorney because they skipped over the part where, usually their letters are screened before they go in and out, right? Otherwise, they would have been on to them about his escape plan. Now, either way, either the doctor or the attorney taking them out for him, both are security violations that they should have been aware of. So the fact that they participated, I feel like they should have been charged with some shit because that is helping with an escape plan.
Yeah.
Now, in those 4 letters, there were detailed escape plan strategies, which would be used against him during his trial as proof of his consciousness of his guilt. Now, the plan was that they would their other plan was that they would bump into each other before entering the courtroom, which I kind of figured his mom didn't like the whole hallway shootout plan.
You think?
And so then it turned into, okay, they'll bump into each other when he's being brought into the courthouse, and Marianne would be, pass him the gun.
Pass the gun off?
Yeah,
Where does he think she's going to smuggle it? And wherever he thinks she's smuggling it, how does he think he's going to grab it? And how does she not put 2 and 2 together that she's still going to get blamed for providing the gun to her murdering son?
So
she's going along with this idea?
So this is just, I'm telling you what's in the letters of this.
Yeah, but it sounds like she's problem solving how to help him escape.
So first off, that .357, those are those little snub nose, tiny things, very easy to conceal. So I don't see how you could get away with passing that to a criminal who, let's face it, is fucking handcuffed. So anyway.
And usually accompanied by multiple officers.
Right. And I would have liked to have been there when Pinky and the Brain are sitting there problem solving, because are they not aware that they're not the only people at the courthouse? There would be plenty of other people, officers included, there too, and they don't seem to have given that a real good thought. But Marianne was to be at the courthouse no later than 7 a.m., and she would sit and wait until she saw them approaching. Then she'd bump into him and pass the gun. After he had the gun, he would then turn it on the deputies and tell them to freeze. And when they did, his mother would unclip their holsters, take their guns and put them in her purse, and then they would go to the car where he would put the deputies in the back, and then, which he notated, she needed to make sure she cleans out her car so the back seats are empty.
And what the hell does she put in her car?
I don't know. But I was like, so that way they can steal the deputies too. And then he would take their vehicle, so that way that wasn't suspicious. And I was just like, okay, again, if
So he thinks
drives,
that they're going to be in a vacant courthouse that they can just waltz
So-
out with a couple
that's why I was
now
like,
unarmed security
and
guards.
that's why I was like, okay, so during this whole plan, they just delete everyone in the background of coming into court and the people who are already opening the courthouse. None of those people apparently exist in this plan.
Of course not. It's
But
their world. We're all just living in it.
But he would finish out his letter with, "You've stayed right with me in all this, and I do appreciate it more than words can say. Love, Bob."
He's so stupid.
I know.
And
So
I'm
that'll bring
assuming
us...
she didn't participate in any type of escape plan, right? She just kind of entertained him in letters.
Now, June 12th rolls around. This is the first day of his trial, and Mary Ann is sitting and waiting. She's also been drinking...
Don't take that tone. Did it in any of those letters, did he ask his mom to try to find what's her face?
Lenora?
Yeah.
Not that I know of. No, I don't think so. It was just planning an escape.
Okay. I was just curious how much of his dirty work he was trying to get his mom to do.
Now, that June 12th rolls around. This is to be the first day of his trial, and Mary Ann is sitting and waiting. She'd also been doing some heavy drinking. I figured because she needed to work up to the courage to do what she's... Yeah, to do what she's about to do. Because I feel like deep down, she knows people might die today, and she's about to get the ball rolling in that. So she's heavily drinking.
Here's a thought. Don't do it.
Which I was laughing at because I was like, now we know where her son gets his brains from, because this is so... When do people do anything well while they're drinking? But anywho, she's pretty fucked up, but she sees her son pull up and is unloaded by 2 deputies. Now, they start walking towards Mary Ann. I figure she was parked next to the courthouse and maybe wherever they pulled up to and were walking. They start walking towards her. She's out of her car at this point. She brushes up against one of the deputies, trying to reach for her son. When she's fended off by them, she panics and goes fleeing to her car, which I feel like the deputies are probably like, what the fuck just happened? And this drunk lady, because I don't know if you've seen anybody drunk run, but I feel like they stood there like, what the fuck? But she jumps into her car and goes speeding away, bouncing off several parked cars and nearly running over several pedestrians on her way out.
Yeah. She's a drunk driver. Is her son just sitting there like, "Ma, come back. You forgot me and the deputies we was going to steal."
So I feel like he was probably like, so nowhere in that plan was drink the bottle of tequila. But regardless, she's arrested that night, where they find her passed out in her car. She also has she has a loaded .357 Magnum and a .22 pistol still in her possession, as well as her 4 letters from her son detailing the escape plan, a key to open the handcuffs, a compass, a rope, and various other supplies.
I mean, wow. It was a one-stop shop for investigators.
It's a good thing she was drunk, because I feel like she still had drool crusted to her face when they found her.
That wasn't drool, that was vomit.
Probably. Although Bob's mother did not have a criminal record, she was given the maximum sentence for trying to pull off this escape and was sentenced to 3 years. Now, because of the seriousness of her crime...
Are you sure this isn't the 70s? 3 years?
Because it was just a plan. So that was the most they could stick her with. Had he escaped, I feel like she would have gotten way more. Obviously, if people would have died or gotten hurt, she would have gotten stuck with that. But considering she just did her reckless driving and nearly killed people and bounced off some vehicles, they slapped her with the most. Because again, she doesn't have a criminal record. Now, usually people who try to help with an escape thing, they could be on probation, not jail time. But they give her 3 years.
She
3
was
years
drunk
and 1 day, actually.
That 1 day is ridiculous.
Mm-hmm.
But you would think that the drunk driving alone would have landed her more than 3 years, plus the plan.
You're using your 2023 eyeballs. they have drunk drivers all over the place, and it's just frowned upon in this time frame.
It's on the not recommended list.
Yeah. You could probably still get away with drinking while being pregnant, too. And smoking.
I think I made sense of their smarts.
Yeah. I just thought the whole plan was hilarious when she, like, drunkenly... again, with the eye rolling and laughing at some of this, I was like, how did this even happen? They're so stupid. That's why he was working at the carnival. He was the clown. You're right.
Sure was.
Now, his trial lasted for 6 months. Now, that included 2 months of jury selection, during all of which he expressed no emotion. Now, Bob would testify on his behalf, and that's where I tell you he would talk about his criminal life and his horrible upbringing, which they didn't really go into, so I don't understand what made his upbringing horrible.
His ma was a drunk and couldn't follow through with plans, and therefore he was mad. So he was like, my mom sucks. I'm mad at her, so I'm going to talk shit.
He would blame his exposure to drugs when he was in jail was partially to blame. And then also women and guns. And I was like, what? What?
Way to take accountability, fuckwad.
But I was just like, so his testifying obviously didn't win over the jury. And the prosecution would actually ask him if he was on the jury what he thought a just punishment was. He even replied that he would vote for the death penalty for him. Which they do try to get the whole trial thrown out because the defense would say that they can't ask that, and because he's too stupid to answer something not the death penalty. Because I feel like his defense team probably looked at each other and were like, what the fuck is wrong with him?
He's stupid. Was he high?
He was. They did have him on tranquilizers.
He was eating him some of his asshole meth.
Now, I feel like it was a ploy to get sympathy from the jury. And that to make it seem like he was real sorry for what he did, so he deserved to die kind of ploys. But he also said, and you're going to like this one, he also said he found God while he was waiting trial and has undergone religious transformation.
Them criminals love to hide behind religion.
Yes. So
not saying that religion is bad. I find it disgusting how many criminals try to hide behind religion, and they think that just because they've been saved that
it's like trying to, when you're playing tag and they're trying to just say they're safe kind of thing. Oh, nope. I'll go off base and do some things, and then nope, can't get me now.
If given the chance, commit a bunch more crimes and then get saved again. And it's like, okay, so yeah, that's...
I forget which case it was where the lady was like, I thought I loved Jesus before, but now I'm really saved. Before I wasn't. I'm like, whatever. Anyway, so the jury deliberated less than 5 hours to find him guilty of 7 counts of murder, robbery, kidnapping, and burglary. And in less than 2 hours, before condemning Bob to death in the gas chamber. Now, he was the first one condemned to go to the gas chamber in 30 years. Now, that was also because that was during the time frame when California was bouncing back and forth between whether you could use the death penalty or not. So he was the first one to be sentenced to the gas chamber in 30 years.
Did they actually put him down, or is he died in prison of natural causes because that's how that works?
Shut your pie hole. The defense pushed for Bob to be sentenced to life without parole, stating the jury would just be adding one more death to this great tragedy. Again, I rolled. Because I was like, his is the death that deserves to happen. The rest of them didn't.
Yeah.
So I wouldn't be sympathetic. I'd be like, no, so this would be the part where it's less tragic because he dies.
Yeah. It would be tragic to keep him alive.
Right. Now, jurors would defend their decision, saying that the weight of the evidence was so heavy and it just couldn't be ignored because they tried to look at it from different sides and what would be a just punishment. But I do feel like that Lenora testifying against him, and then even his own dumbassness testifying, like they didn't see any other way around it other than he deserved to die. Now, Bob's sister Peggy Johnson would stare straight ahead for a moment when the verdict was read and his sentence was read, then broke into sobs. Bob, however, had no reaction, but that was attributed to his large doses of prescription tranquilizers that he was on during his trial. Now, as he was walked out
they
of
were
the...
afraid he was going to escape, so they were like, let's just trank
Probably.
him up. So even if he does get a hold of a weapon, we can subdue him. Was he a big dude? Do you know?
I don't know what his size was. Now, as he was walked out of the courtroom, he turned to the victim's family and said, "If you want to come to my execution, I'll make sure you're invited."
He's sending
To
out them
which-
party invitations. Fucking idiot.
To which
This case has me cussing way more than my typical profanity. Like,
dude,
this
I told
case,
you all during this whole thing, I was like, what the fuck? Now, Joyce Schaefer, the daughter-in-law of the Schaefers, would reply, "I'll be there." Now, after the jury was dismissed, Bob was hustled out of the courtroom, surrounded by the deputies and bailiff. Now, he missed crossing paths with his mother, Mary Ann Bishop, who was being brought in to another courtroom because they were going to set her trial date for the whole escape
trying to help
plan
him
thing.
escape and drunk driving.
Which I just thought it was funny that they nearly crossed paths. But
I feel like they should have done that because that would have been awesome.
Now, his execution date was set for May 12th, 1993. He would await that date at San Quentin Prison. But you know how that goes with all the appeals and blah, blah, blah. His attorneys arguing that much more worse murderers, Charles Manson and the Hillside Strangler, were given life sentences. And in the scheme of that he wasn't so bad. And also the death penalty was immoral. More eye rolling, blah, blah, blah.
Again, I stand by my previous statements and other cases where I wished his defense attorneys would get caught in a dark alley with him and see if they still feel the same way.
So
or if
that
it was their
brings
significant others.
Yeah, I was going to say, or their children. Or how about their parents? Just nicely RVing. Yeah. And the fact that these two would prey on people who, when they'd ask for help or assistance in some way and pretend to be an innocent, cute couple, which, by the way, I would be able to tell that it's a 14-year-old little child, not a...
Yeah, it'd look like father and daughter, not...
Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
But they were preying on people who, like, RV people, it's a little community. They talk to each other. They, like, network, that they help. That was some shady shit. But anywho, that'll bring us to September 7th, 1995, when Bob was found hanging in his cell by a tube sock that he had fashioned into a noose.
What a coward.
Yep.
He didn't find religion so well because they frown upon suicide.
I wish I could say he died of the gas chamber, but I feel like he was probably getting to the end of his appeals and knew it was coming.
So I have a question, and you probably don't have an answer for this one, but what happened to Lenora? Do you have any updates on whether she went on to become a law-abiding, productive member of society, or did she end up with herself a nice criminal record filled with drug use and most likely some prostitution dabbled in there? And any ideas?
I know.
He's also lucky that he didn't get her pregnant, or she's lucky.
Right. I thought of that too, because when, like, it could have been a bunch of children rearing around. But that's this fucker. That's good old eye-rolling Bob. Oh, that was my ankle, if you heard that.
I sure did. Is it still encased in flesh, or did it just pop out?
Is it still in where? Like, in my leg? In my leg hole.
It sounds like it wanted its 15 minutes of fame on our Here podcast. Hello, Claire's ankle. Welcome to the show.
It's more like goodbye. There it went. Apparently I done sat here for too long and I got to do me some stretching. Well, that's all I got.
Oh, thanks for that one.
Hey, I just thought it was funny. So when I picked this one, it was first because I was really upset when I first read the summary of the case, and was upset that they were preying on basically retired couples who are just RVing and enjoying
life together. Yeah.
Which again, those nature people are supposed to be all like part of their own community of helping people. Like your fellow nature lovers. But anyway, but then when I read about his mom trying to do the escape thing, I laughed. I flat out laughed when I read she bounced off several cars when she was running away. Mainly because when she brushed up against the deputy and they fended her off, and then she went running back to her car because she freaked out. I just thought that was funny because at that point, I feel like they just nudged her, like, back up, lady.
Yeah, I was going to say, let's face it. They didn't fend her off. She drunken stumbled into him and he like kind of did an elbow shove of like, get the fuck off of me. And then she's like, oh no. And she ran away. And then she did her little
drunken stumble.
Yeah. And then as she's weeble wobbling back to her car, she's doing like the pinball machine and just bouncing off of stuff, gets in the vehicle and continues on with her ding, 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 ding.
Yeah, well, because I feel like if they wanted to have pursued her, they would have got her before she got in her car. But I feel like the two deputies just looked at each other and then proceeded into the courtroom. And it wasn't until they found somebody drunk and passed out in a vehicle that probably looked pretty battered on the side of the road and were probably more concerned thinking she was in an accident. And then when they were like, whoa, you smell like a distillery. And then they found those
letters. Yeah. Yeah, because I'm going to say that there was no fending her off because I feel like she would have been put into custody immediately, not just left to go pinball off of everything.
But I do feel like just like
she didn't kill somebody.
Yeah. Well, I do feel like he manipulated his mother because just like his sister cried when they read he'd get the death penalty, that whole scenario, which is why she wanted to help him escape to avoid getting put down. But I say he deserved it. And I don't know if maybe somehow he told his mother it wasn't him. Maybe he told his mother Lenora did it all. Now, mind you, she wasn't present for it all, but his mom wouldn't know what all happened unless she sat in on it. And since it was to happen before the case started, I don't know. Whatever he did, he was able to convince his mother it was a good idea.
I like how Lenora testified against him and then was like, he did all of it.
When he I like to see his face, but apparently he had no reaction. So that's probably why he had to be tranquilized, because he probably kept standing up going, no, this is bullshit.
You weren't supposed to done tell anybody none of that.
Bob, you're going to need to sit down.
We done did us a pinky promise and did us a fuck, I don't know. Whatever, however you do meth. A pinky promise and a kiss of meth. Some meth breath. I don't know. I don't fucking do drugs. I don't know. I don't do drugs.
So from what my understanding is, it can be in the pill form.
I feel like with meth,
again, you can do whatever with it. Shove it in your ass, crunch it up, snort it, make it into a liquid, inject it. I don't know what they're doing with it. It's not good. It damages your brain. Look at what this came up with as a plan. Apparently no one exists in that plan. But I did laugh also when they said when his mom was running away, like all the people she almost ran over and the cars she swiped, which would tell me the courthouse was very lively at 7:40 in the morning.
I did roll my eyes quite a bit, so good
I
call on that
told
one.
you, like, that's why I said, not a lot of cases I'll do the what, and then what.
We hope you enjoyed today's episode of Homicide Hobbies. If we made you laugh, if we made you cry, or if we mindfucked you for the day, then we thank you for listening. Please write a review on whatever you're listening to us on. Tell your friends, tell your family, tell your coworkers. We're freaking awesome. And join us next week for another episode of Homicide Hobbies. I'm Andy.
And I'm Claire.
That's all we've got.